That movie sucked.
I kind of liked it.
Movie Night Crew Network.
Hello and welcome to Content and Capable, where I try to figure out what it really means to adult. Today I spoke to Adele all about her love of classical music. We spoke on a variety of aspects of classical music, especially about representation and some of our experiences being lifelong music learners. Welcome to Content and Capable, Adele. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited to talk with you today.
Yeah. In terms of your kind of like journey with adulthood, we'll start with kind of that. How have you felt like you've just suddenly become an adult? I think we were chatting a couple of weeks ago about how kind of like a lot of us our age have kind of like just suddenly had to like pick up and really just become adults ourselves.
Yeah, I think for me especially was graduating from my undergrad back in May and then moving to a new city that I had never been before that was like right halfway across the country from my parents and my family, and starting my grad program, basically like knowing almost nobody here. And I really feel like that's where I've started to feel like a true adult. I mean, you know, sometimes people think adulting is, like going to the bank and, getting my groceries and stuff. But I think for me, the move has really made me more extroverted and forced me into situations where I normally wouldn't be, and just how to deal with them and how to make those decisions. And it's just made me feel more on top of things, I think.
Yeah, I think moving further away from home, even for some people, just a shorter distance and just moving out of that home environment or that kind of like area of effect that kind of parents have when you live in quite close, means that like you're just by yourself, I actually have to think about things, cooking dinner. That's one of my, like, I love cooking, but cooking dinner at the moment has become a bit of a chore.
Yes, agreed.
And it's a bit hard. So I've got to get back into it now that I'm on holidays, which I'm really excited about. And we're here to talk all about classical music.
Yes.
How did you get into classical music?
So my mom is who got me into classical music. She like sang in a bunch of choirs and stuff when she was in high school. And when I was like a really, really young kid, basically like a baby, she was singing still in choirs in my city. So like as a kid, I would kind of tag along to these choir rehearsals or her concerts and, go see concerts in the area. I was really fortunate that I grew up in Canada's capital. So we had the National Arts Centre. And so we had we do have a really great orchestra. And there was also an opera company when I was growing up. So schools in the area would also kind of take their classes to go see events. So all of that really, really fostered, I think, like a big interest in the arts and like an exposure to it. And then my mom also put me in like the quintessential, I think, instrument for kids, which is piano lessons. So I did piano lessons. Yeah. Me and my brother both did piano lessons, I think around the age of 5. Which, I mean, yeah, like I said, it's the quintessential thing. I think it's also quintessential for kids to kind of hate their piano lessons. But I had some great teachers. And, piano lessons led to flute lessons as well. And then by my last year of middle school, so right before I left for high school, I was also taking voice lessons and singing in some choirs in the area. And then I think in high school, it turned into a more of like a professional track route. I was doing a lot more music. I had like music activities like pretty much every night of the week. In high school, doing the theater productions there and like in the band and the choir. So that kind of geared me for what I ended up studying in university. But yeah, from a very young age.
Yeah, I kind of had the same journey. It's weird because in Australia, our capital is like the United States. It's like a special capital area.
Yeah.
And so a lot of our like big professional stuff actually is like in the other cities around Australia. So my dad and my mother got married in Sydney, and I was born in Sydney.
Okay.
And Dad was playing in the army band, and had been playing trumpet since he was, I don't know, maybe 11, 12. I'm not 100% sure. And then, they started me on piano lessons, and I basically had the same journey as you. I was like pretty much on a professional track to become and to do music. But then I made the switch in my final year of high school, and I decided that I wasn't going to pursue music further, and I was just going to enjoy playing it with community bands and things instead.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very interesting to see people who go into that and then take it into a university aspect rather than doing something else, because I have got a few friends who are doing it, but it's very rare.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's very intense. I mean, like the audition process to get into university, it varies according to the university, but still it's definitely intense, and it's just different from, submitting documents and submitting an application, which, don't get me wrong, that's very difficult as well. But the audition process of traveling to separate universities, and this was obviously pre-COVID, and doing live auditions and coordinating that and, picking repertoire all in your senior year of high school, and usually starting around this time in the fall, because some universities would have pre-audition rounds. And so you have to pass that to even get considered for a live audition. It's all really intense. So it means that you have to have kind of a certain amount of knowledge and a certain amount of experience under your belt for a high schooler, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. And a little exclusionary. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that, I don't know, the universities, at least here in Australia, have got a weird relationship with music in general. And there are different universities that work better with different specializations of music, and your classical music works better at the official conservatorium for the state rather than going to another music program, or if you wanted to play more modern or be a bit more pop or more experimental music, going to a different university is more into that. But I definitely find it very hard. We had to know that we wanted to study music quite early on, because the application process for normal university started, I think it was in August, whereas for for music it started in June, July, and we start university in March. So it was very early, and you had to know exactly what you wanted to do. And I was really lucky. I had some events quite early on in my senior year of high school that meant that I had made that decision quite early on that I was not going to be pursuing music beyond there.
Yeah. For here, I think to start the university application process, it's usually January to March, but I was starting in the fall, and then basically February to March, I was traveling around Canada to do auditions. Also it factors in the fact that, you have to pay for flights, you have to be able to travel, you have to be able to take that time off, pay the application fees just to audition, which, you have to pay application fees to apply to university. You're not guaranteed a spot for sure, but it's quite intense to go through. And I also went through Canada's official kind of examination program. It's called the Royal Conservatory of Music. And I know that Australia has a similar system. And that really helped me prepare for it as well. So I was doing RCM exams for piano, flute, theory, voice since I think beginning of middle school. But once again,
so jealous.
There were a lot of exams and also music festivals. So, but all of those also require, fees. So if you think about having that background and applying to a university for music, as opposed to someone who didn't, the odds are kind of stacked against people who don't have the finances to necessarily prepare for that all during middle and high school, which I find really interesting.
Yeah, I definitely like it's definitely a very interesting thing to think about, especially because, a lot of us who end up going into music have been and are quite well off, and even just lessons in general are very expensive.
Yes.
So I'm the eldest of 10. I'm the eldest of 10 children, and every child in our family has learnt the piano from the age of 4 through to the age of 12 at the very least. And that is 8 years of piano lessons every week. And it is intense. There was a point where we had a couple of piano teachers, and we were moving more. I don't know whether you've heard of the Suzuki method, but it's a lot of learning by ear. We did that in like primary school and things, and then moved on to the more of the structured, what we call AMEB style learning, which is gearing up towards exams and things. So I actually got an examination done on music, not very well. I didn't do very well at all. But that's because my, I think just the way I learn and play piano is just not good at all. But it was very interesting because my father would complain incessantly about how much it would cost, but he knew it was really, really valuable to him and to all of us that we learnt music. And just for some people, it's just not possible whatsoever. And the poor piano teacher, I felt sorry for her. She was a university student, and would come to our house at about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and would be there until 7:30, 8 o'clock.
All the kids and all their lessons.
And we would, there was only 5 of us who were having lessons that day. The small children had their lessons in the morning from 7 o'clock in the morning before school. Not with the same teacher, but with a different one. And it was just, it was a long day. And, we'd get back from school at about 4:15, and we'd be exhausted. And then we'd have to, be ready to jump on the piano and rehearse. And then I had band practice afterwards. So I had band practice from 7 till 9 o'clock on a Monday night. So we would have to coordinate to make sure we got the right piano lesson so we could get to band practice. But then also completely pivot from playing, the piano to playing the trombone, and, eating dinner at some stage in there and doing homework. It was terrible.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot. That reminds me a lot of my last 2 years of high school, where I was doing 3 instruments, private theory and history lessons, and then also working part-time and singing in 2 choirs, and then also singing in a church job on Sunday mornings. And looking back now as a university student, I don't know how I did it, and did full-time high school as well. I truly don't know how I did it, because at least when I went to university for my undergrad, and I did vocal performance there. So, just some background. So I was actually doing music classes. So my classes were music. It wasn't 2 separate things anymore. I have no idea how I did high school.
I think that there is a reason why we do high school when we're young.
Yes.
And there are so many opportunities. There's this great photo of me in year 7. So I just started high school, and I had a trombone on my back. I had this huge backpack on my front full of books, because I also did physics and chemistry in high school. So I had, this huge backpack on the front, and then 4 of those Cadbury fundraiser chocolate boxes in my hands as well, walking onto a school bus to go home. And someone had taken a photo of me. I think every now and then it gets circulating going, this is what happens when our kids are too involved.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to learn where your barriers are, because when I got to university, I knew when I could say no and go, actually, that's not for me, or I don't need to, do that or be super invested in it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that work ethic really helped me once I got to university as well. Being able to say no to things, and also just being able to scope out where and when the good opportunities were. My undergrad university was pretty small, and it was undergrad only, which is great because there were a lot more opportunities. So, it was great. But having all of that extra background, I think in high school really, really set me up quite well for the first 2 years.
Yeah, it definitely was. I think it was very important that I done that. And, you know, as much as we were talking before about how much of a barrier of entry it is, I think that learning how expensive it was as well really made me appreciate the amount of effort my parents had put in to making sure I got the music education that I did.
Yeah.
So what are you studying in your master's then?
Yeah, so I am, like, the official title of it, I guess, is a Master of Arts in Musicology. And musicology is essentially the study of music history. So, I mean, when you do a Master of Arts in Musicology, it's mostly grad seminars, discussion-based. So it's not a performance degree. So I did performance for my undergrad. And about the end of third year, kind of right when COVID was happening, I like saw what was happening. And I was thinking to myself, you know, I know a lot of people who have gone on to do like a master's in singing, but I just didn't really want to go through that audition process again. It's even more grueling for the graduate programs. It's actually kind of insane. Like the amount of repertoire you have to start preparing so far in advance, and basically from November to April, you're auditioning and applying to grad schools for any kind of performance. So if you're trying to, if you're doing like an M-Muse in trombone performance or an M-Muse in voice. So I was looking at that and I was like, well, I'm also really, you know, interested in this other aspect of music. I've always really loved like English classes and history classes and like reading and writing and researching. I love the kind of detective work that history is. And so I got like a research grant in summer 2020 to do this really cool project where I was working on like kind of detective work, basically like unknown music. And so after that finished, I was really thinking, you know, maybe this would be fun to do a degree in. And, you know, I'm really interested in it. I could keep singing, but I also have like the research aspect of it. So that's kind of why I chose it. And it also means that, you know, I can keep singing. I can sing in choirs or, you know, in ensembles or take lessons, but there's not that added pressure of having to be in the practice room for 3 hours a day, constant lessons, constant performances. Yeah. It just isn't really for me at this stage in my life. It was a lot in undergrad, and, you know, currently, especially with the pandemic and like so many performance opportunities were kind of sidelined for so long, and it's coming back, don't get me wrong. And, you know, during the pandemic, there was some super creative, amazing innovation of how to get performances to people, etc. But yeah, I think it all worked out. It all worked out pretty well.
Yeah. And so what are some of the interesting things that you have learnt while studying your master's?
Yeah, so I'm interested in feminist musicology and more like the social aspect of music history. There's something called historical musicology, which is a lot more analytical. And I think like looking at the music itself, I mean, you know, you could be like a Bach scholar and you could list off tens of thousands of facts about, you know, all of his works and stuff. I really think that type of musicology is really valid. But there's like a newer element of musicology that's kind of come out from the 90s when you start combining, okay, we've got music history, we've got these lives of these composers and these pieces and these musicians from antiquity, basically. And how can we make that intersect with like queer studies or gender and sexuality studies or, you know, sociology? So I'm really interested in like historical reception to performance. I'm really interested in like the voices of women musicians that aren't really talked about usually, and more, I think, like I would say like 300 to 500 years ago. So especially medieval Renaissance and what we would consider the early Baroque. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely find it very interesting. I had my high school band director. She ran the music department. Well, not the music department, sorry. She ran the performing arts department. And she she's doing her doctorate in something very similar, female Australian composers.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Helping build up that in today's modern era. So I definitely love that kind of topic, talking about how what place women had in music making, and how that worked, and what are some of the interesting things that happened from there. What are some of the really interesting findings that you found through this research?
That's a great question. So I'm still like pretty early in my grad research, but I've done a couple really cool projects within, I would say, like the last 2 years. I did a conference, I think back in the spring, about like music making in English nunneries, English medieval nunneries, which was really, really cool. There's a lot of music that's kind of just sitting in archives in libraries around the world. And the fun part about being like a historian or a music historian is going to those archives and like finding things. I think all historians like nerd out about those things. Unfortunately, as like a student, that's not really accessible to me currently. But yeah, so that paper talked about like a couple different nunneries and just like the performance practices there, especially because it's kind of fascinating how when Henry VIII, just like a little sidetrack of English history, when Henry VIII switched over to oversimplify it, but switched over to, his new like kind of brand of Protestantism, he actually destroyed the monasteries and the nunneries. He like dissolved them, took their assets, took their money, took everything, and actually a lot of records were destroyed. So piecing together kind of like a narrative of what did these women do in the nunneries, and what did music making, which is so integral to like Catholic cloister worship, like what did that look like? So that was a really cool project. And like a lot of people are writing about similar things. It's kind of like a current trend in musicology, this kind of like feminist spin. So some great publications have come out in recent years.
It's very interesting, and I find it very fascinating, the different aspects of, when something changes, what changes to the music, especially because music is so integral to our culture in general, but then also like the religion itself as well. And because religion was basically the culture at that time, I find it very fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned like music's role in change, because my current kind of fun side research project that I'm kind of hoping will turn into my master's thesis is looking at female music making in the Restoration period. So England once again, but also I've been doing a lot of research into how has the music changed in England, because you had the monarchy, then you had, the abolition of the monarchy, and like 10-ish years of like the Commonwealth, and then the Restoration. So as a historian, looking at these major historical events and thinking, okay, so like what about the music? Like what about the musicians themselves? It's just really fascinating to me.
Yeah, I really enjoy that. What has changed. I did music extension in high school, which was this really great added addendum to our music program, which meant that you come on a Thursday afternoon for a couple of hours and talk about, and we do 3 major projects. So we would do 2 practical projects and a research project. And the research project I did was this great comparison of how the innovations in Beethoven's era are still making impacts in the innovations we have in today's classical music making. And I find it very fascinating.
Yeah, Beethoven is definitely very influential still today.
Yeah.
He's one of those that are kind of considered like a genius composer. Yeah. And I use that term really lightly. Last year was like the 250th anniversary of either his birth or his death.
Not sure which one.
Neither. And honestly, I'm not a Beethoven scholar by any means.
No, yeah.
But yeah, like I said, he's kind of like revered as a genius composer, and there's a lot of weight put on him and, you know, Mozart and Bach. And, you know, as someone who works closely with kind of anonymous women composers and, you know, not underdeveloped, like kind of women's narratives or composers' narratives that have been kind of like given a short stick by history. I find some of the discourse surrounding like the big name composers a little tiresome. But
yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, that kind of like shows the divide between what I would consider like the old classical music and the new classical music. And like the new classical music, I would say, would be people our age versus people who are older and kind of subscribe to that idea of like a genius composer and aren't too happy about these new trends in like musicology and music theory and ethnomusicology, etc. So
yeah. I definitely take the stance of Mary Clay. You can enjoy something and still be critical of it. And I definitely think that that's something that a lot of people who are a little bit older than us, not a little bit, who are quite a bit older than us, often struggle with. You know, to them, they see us, you know, critiquing something and they go, oh, you mustn't enjoy it. It's like, no, we still enjoyed it. We just also want to participate in this healthy discourse. Otherwise, you know, there's no point having that, you know, there.
Exactly. There's so much happening right now where people who are usually younger, women, people of color, queer people, where we're in this industry and we love it so much. Like we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't love it, but we're trying to change the trend. And there's a lot of pushback, you know, oh, you're trying to cancel classical music. Oh, you're trying to cancel Beethoven. And it's like, no, we're just looking at something with a critical lens, and we're thinking, you know, how can we move on from this but still appreciate it, but also make space for new works or, you know, unappreciated works, etc.
Or like, even there was a really interesting debate I had with one of my piano teachers once. The attribution of songs to the correct people, just because it says, you know, because it says it comes from Bach doesn't mean it necessarily comes from Bach himself. It might have been gifted to him or something. There was a particular piece I remember playing on the piano, and we had like two versions of the Suzuki piano book. And so you looked in the old version and it would just say, you know, Bach, whereas the other one would, the title actually attributed it to a notebook for Anna I'm going to mispronounce her second name. Magdalena Bach.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because we've done that attribution, it you kind of understand, oh, so it might not necessarily 100% be Bach's original work.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out because that actually was a big thing when that happened. And like the theory was posed that Anna Magdalena Bach, who was Bach's second wife, I believe, was actually not just like the copyist for his works, but also had composed some of the works herself. And it was disproved. I mean, the question still lingers in my mind, but it was disproved by like a reputable scholar a couple years ago. But it also just raises the question that like we should be looking at these works critically, and there's a reason that like we should look at them with this like new lens. We should look at like established composers and look at also the other people in their life and the influences that they had. For example, Robert Schumann and Clara Schumann. She's so often just referred to as, you know, his wife, his muse, you know, helped edit some of his stuff, but she was like an amazing composer and performer by herself. And it's only kind of recently, I want to say like within the past 30 years, that people have really started to publish things and talk about her. And history courses, ye old mandatory history 101 for music students in university. It's only recently that people are really beginning to talk about some of these women.
Yeah, I definitely find it very interesting. And even to an aspect of like, somehow, I don't know whether this is true, but in the back of my mind, I go, Mozart's sister was also very good, but she just never got the opportunity because Mozart kind of like took the limelight away from everything else.
Yeah, so that's another really, really fascinating female figure. That's Nannerl Mozart. She was a little bit older than her brother, and then their dad, who was like really, really intense, took them touring basically as these like child prodigies. But as soon as Nannerl kind of turned of age, no more touring, no more performing for you. Off you go to be married. Bye. Basically, to paraphrase.
Yeah. And it's kind of sad because it's like you don't hear about it, and we haven't heard about it for the past few hundred years. And then finally we've given the opportunity to hear about it. And, a lot of the time, it takes just so much more extra work to find that music or find, a documentation of it so that we can, properly attribute it and properly explore it, because it hasn't been looked after the same way as Mozart's normal music has been looked after.
Yeah, exactly. And for so many of these women, they composed works, and we either have lost them due to that attitude, or they weren't able to compose as much, or on a grander scale because of kind of like the society that they lived in. So when we look at like major companies, like major symphonies and like opera companies, it's kind of tough to be like, oh, like you should program more women, like look at all these women from history, because like the works don't really like match the same output as some of the male composers. So, a lot of people kind of use that as an excuse to just keep programming the same old dead white guys. But for myself and a lot of people my age in classical music, we're like, well, this is just a perfect excuse for us to commission new works by women or by, queer or people of color. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it definitely does. And it's interesting because we do see that more often. The local, we don't have a very accessible orchestra here in my city, but the local wind symphony that is of professional level is a community band as well. But the local wind symphony just plays and premieres a lot more works by a lot more different people.
That's awesome.
And a lot more interesting people as well. I've played some of those either same or compositions by the same composers, because I don't play at that level. And it's very interesting to see, these compositions are amazing and innovative, and they take, the normal setting of a concert band or an orchestra or a brass band into a new level. And, yes, it might be expensive. New works of music are very expensive, but, we should be seeing more of that. And I really would love to see more of that. And I can't wait to see more of it either.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, in classical music news, the Metropolitan Opera, which is the largest arts organization in North America, just had an opera performed there called Fire Shut Up in My Bones. And I don't remember the composer name, but it like really made waves with like, this is something new, this is something diverse, and then once again, like, why does it take the Met so long to, include this in kind of like their regular programming? Yeah, I think we're going to see that as like this generation and like a slightly older, as we, I think, make more headways into the industry, and as we take over some of these like important positions on boards and things like that, arts organizations are going to basically either have to like diversify or or die, basically. And I'm saying that that's very blunt, but, you know, like for people my age, we don't want to go hear Beethoven 9 again, or we don't want to go see La Boheme again. We want works by our peers. We want diverse works. We want something new or someone underrepresented. And I think the pandemic really highlighted a lot of that and a lot of the inaccessibility and, you know, the fact that most arts organizations aren't diverse. So we've already seen some change, and I'm kind of really excited to see like what comes of it.
Oh yeah, 100%. One of the things that I was exposed to in late high school, which was really, really awesome, is these styles of music that don't get played very often. More talking about your minimalist style, or and your like, and really, you know, playing. Johann de Meij is just, you know, yes, he is also, you know, an old white dude, but he composes some really interesting things in some very interesting formats. And as a brass player, I don't often get to play really interesting music. Often it's very stereotypical, very predictable. And I vividly remember my last year of high school, I was a part of the Young Conservatorium program, and we played the Big Apple Symphony, which is this really awesome symphony. The middle movement is just like a recording with some piano playing and a gong, and like the first and third movements, and it's just this really amazing piece. Very repetitive, but very interesting, because if you listen hard enough, you can hear like the tiny changes in the music. And it's all about those, you know, small things. And you don't get that in like a normal band. So you don't get exposed to that as often, because that work was an hour and a half long. But being able to do that and being able to experience and listen to it, I just like, it opened my eyes to the fact that not even just like representation of people in composing, but also we should be better representing different styles of music and different ways of composing in the music we perform and choose to listen to. Yeah,
some of my favorite concerts ever have been works that are new and include like multimedia, so like tape, or, you know, there's something playing on a screen. There was this one concert in my undergrad, the first year, I think like the second month, October. And it was this soprano who was a winner of a competition. So, you know, she did this kind of national tour, and she sang this new piece. And behind her on a screen, there was some like visual media playing. It also incorporated some like pre-recorded stuff. And then she had like physical objects with her on stage. There was a balloon that she popped, like she was popping balloons. She also took like a saucer from like a teacup and a saucer and smashed the saucer on stage while singing. Yeah. And I remember just sitting there and I was like, not only is this entertainment, because, you know, who doesn't like to see just kind of some anarchy, but it was also just so cool and just so different. Her name is Allie Smither. I believe she is currently in Texas, or was in Texas to study. But yeah, that's her name. Amazing. I still remember it. But yeah, just concerts that are like out of the box are really exciting. And I think just show that there is an audience for new things, you know, or for different things.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I think that the more we understand representing people and different people in the choices we make with music, the more we will understand representing different styles in different pieces of music.
Agreed.
Yeah, and then like. And then also trickles down, and then you start learning about it in high school and middle school and primary school, and you get exposed to it a lot earlier. I really like the YouTuber Tankracruel. He does some really interesting analyses on different kinds of music. And there's this video where he talks about how kids' music doesn't have to be simple, because if we expose them to simple music, they're just going to take longer to appreciate and understand, the more complex and interesting music that, becomes quite commonplace when you step further into that space.
Yeah, I agree. Like, as a kid, being able to go to like symphony concerts and opera for kids and stuff like that. I remember like some small opera companies coming to visit schools, and they would like put on like productions in English with costumes and stuff, and just stuff like that was so formative and so important. I mean, this could also turn into an advocacy for like arts education in schools.
Yeah.
Because, I feel like so many times when, the budget is reviewed for, elementary, middle, or high schools, so much of what is immediately cut is the arts. In my high school, I saw that happen because we used to have like a theater production every year. But then it got cut, so then it was only every 2 years, which I remember being, like, as a 15-year-old, I was really, really mad about. Yeah, and so, like, the formative aspects of learning music or being exposed to kind of theater, dance, like opera, plays, etc., it's just, it's really important. And I think that too often it's what gets cut first for schools.
It is definitely. And Melbourne has just started to come out of lockdown. Actually, today as we record is Melbourne Cup Day, which is a huge public holiday. And they're all really celebrating because it's the first like big holiday they've had since COVID really started. And they, there was a commentator from Melbourne who I follow on TikTok named David Cairns. He is very much talks about, Australia and the things that are going on in Australia and political, but he works in the arts sector, and he made the comment a few months ago, and it's really stuck with me. The arts is always the first to shut down when something happens.
Yes.
It's always an indication, and it is terrible that we go to shut the arts down first, then shutting everything down equally, or even just, considering, do we need to completely shut it down? What other ways can we do? What other strategies can we use to protect the arts a little bit more and be able to continue things? Hamilton's in Australia at the moment. Australia's got a really great musical culture.
Oh, awesome.
But the problem is our governments kind of don't reciprocate that. So Wicked comes and tours basically every 3 or 4 years.
I love that.
Because we're just obsessed, and so everyone will go and watch it.
Honestly, I'm kind of obsessed with Wicked too, so I can get behind that.
And like our symphony orchestras and our youth orchestras and our bands have this really, really great internal culture, but it doesn't permeate very much outside of that, like kind of almost self-fulfilling kind of like little circle.
Yeah.
And it really kind of makes me upset as someone who has to step back and look at, everything else is going on, interacts with people who work in sports, interacts with people who work in politics and other aspects of life, who just don't understand that the arts have been and will be really, really important. And, then a little bit don't really care about when, all the clubs are closed, so no emerging artists can, try out their things on the club, at the clubs, or, the orchestra's concert season was scrapped, and so they're not earning any money now and they're in dire straits. And, it's kind of really upsetting to watch things start to fall apart. And I'm really hoping that because we've kind of turned a corner here in Australia and things are opening up again, we'll be able to recover really, really quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned things falling apart, because I remember watching the pandemic unfold in the spring, and I watched, so the Met, who I've mentioned before, they closed their doors for the first time in ages, which was very, very monumentous. And obviously, like all arts organizations followed suit. But a big thing that happened with the pandemic was just symphony orchestras and arts orgs like the Met kind of giving their artists the I was going to say something rude, but I won't. kind of.
Yeah, I think people might understand what what you meant. Yeah,
short-sighted.
There was no real support.
No, so it's interesting. I took this arts and culture management course in the summer of 2020. So I actually wrote like a whole essay on how the Met was handling the pandemic, and I looked at their financial records and as much of their contracts as I could. And just the details there, because they furloughed like the majority of their artists. So as of March 2020, their artists, and they have a lot. They have a full symphony orchestra, and then they have a chorus of 50 to 80 people, I'm pretty sure. Not to mention like the regular kind of like principal soloists that they employ. So all of those artists like lost their benefits. I think it's been a while since I remember, but you know, there was some shit going down. And it was really like the chorus of the Met had to set up basically like a GoFundMe for the people in it. And I remember thinking like, how is that possible? Like, how is it possible that the largest arts organization in North America is doing that to its artists when they're racking in like the president and the people on the board have like massive salaries, and the president said he was going to take a pay cut, but it just doesn't add up. So there's a big difference between like the working ground artists like myself and the people who head these arts organizations. And so I think when we like have a discussion about diversifying the repertoire, etc., diversifying the concert program, you know, the people on the ground want that. But it's not just pushback from like audience goers that we're seeing. It's pushback from a lot of people who seem to be like kind of at the top of the pyramid, which is really interesting.
And it's kind of sad as well because we don't get that opportunity to really, you know, show how wonderful music making is when we have had to spend the whole time fighting just to exist in that context of just being able to perform. Exactly. Which is really sad.
Fighting to survive, essentially, because the arts, you know, for so many years, it's like so precarious. So the reason that Beethoven 9 and La Boheme and Mahler 10, the reason that they're constantly programmed is because people will pay to go see them. And it's the phrase that we use is butts in seats to be a little vulgar, but that's what will get audience turnout. And so it's a question then of, okay, then how do we encourage audiences to be curious and excited about new things or different things? And how do we kind of change the minds of some of these arts organizations that are very, very hesitant? And I understand why they're hesitant, because you need to turn a profit. And if you don't turn a profit, the arts organization folds. You can't employ the artists, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't like it's really tough. There's no clear answer or easy solution.
No, yeah. I suppose it's like movie cinemas where they will play, you know, the most popular movies and the biggest movies because they will get butts and seats.
Yes.
But they won't play, you know, the indie films. Or here in Australia, we're having a big discussion at the moment about Australian films and how to best support our Australian filmmaking. So that we can see more high quality films come out of our industry. And it's the same in music, you know. If we want to see more high quality music, we need to invest in that modern high quality music, and that means putting on concerts with that modern high quality music. And it is quite sad to often see even in I played in a finale concert. So the Queensland Performing Arts Centre here is like it has one of the biggest stages in Queensland.
Okay.
And I performed on that stage at the end of year 12. And it was a really, really great opportunity. We only had a 25 or a 10-minute set or something, stupidly short. Anyway, but we just chose something. We had an option between two pieces, and I think the piece that I wanted to do was a bit more interesting, a bit more challenging, and the other one was just an easy one that had been played before, and that's what the composer chose. And yes, we did a really good job, and we played a really great version of it, but it didn't mean that we, got the opportunity to explore, slightly different music. And, and conversely, I've seen some really, really great investment. The National Band Championships, which is all the brass bands and all the concert bands get together and compete nationally once a year over Easter. They commission test pieces
for
every...
That's awesome.
At least for their like top grade brass bands. Each of them will be commissioned. And once my middle school trombone teacher was commissioned. He's a composer. But they commission these pieces, and it means that there's this really great opportunity to hear new music being basically premiered, while we are still in that traditional setting, and still get to play those traditional pieces, because there is still a march section and a hymn section, and then you choose an own choice piece, which often has to come from a prescribed list. So the commissioned work, the test piece, is often the most innovative section of it, which I find very, very cool to listen to.
Yeah, commissions are so important. Not only for exposure and to add on a resume, but also, when you're a full-time composer or even a part-time, like the commission is like, that's the money that's going into your pocket. So having like a reasonable commission that's actually like a decent amount of money is really important for composers. I have a lot of friends who are composers, and I know that the biggest thing for them is like these commissions and these competitions that they're constantly submitting works to. But then again, we've talked about barriers earlier in this episode. There's barriers there because a lot of times just to submit their pieces to this competition or whatever, they have to pay an entry fee. And it's like, that's so counterproductive. That's like as a singer, there's these young artist programs where you can, audition. And if you get in, you spend 10 days intensely working with, this famous teacher. You have to pay to audition. And it's young people, whether they're composers or they're performers, usually we don't just have $150 to just apply to these constant programs during the summer. But yet having that on your resume is kind of expected if you want to apply to a place like grad school, or if you want to apply for a permanent artist position. So there's this dichotomy that it doesn't really add up.
No, it doesn't sit well with me either, because then, beyond that, it's all these egos as well, because it's a creative pursuit. So I'm going to tell this story. I don't know whether I've actually told it on the podcast before, but the reason I don't study music is because in year 12, so my final year of high school, I was in the Young Conservatorium program. I had been for about a year. We did our high school music camp, which was in the second or third week of term. And we worked on all the pieces that we were going to be playing as bands. So I was playing in the Wind Symphony. And so we were working on these pieces as a band, and we had a guest conductor come in on the Saturday. So we went Friday, Saturday, Sunday. On the Saturday, the guest conductor came in, and it is this conductor. I won't name his name here because I don't want to he's very, very well known here in the Queensland music making scene, and those who know me know who I'm talking about. But he was this really amazing. Everyone talked about him. Everyone talked about how amazing he was at conducting, and he was this most amazing band director. He conducts, the Wind Orchestra for the state. He guests everywhere. He's a school teacher himself. He just does all this amazing work. And so we were told he was amazing, and he was very eccentric, and, a bit of a novelty. A new conductor always, makes things a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
And he then invited me that afternoon to join the Queensland Youth Orchestras, which he also conducted.
Okay.
I don't know whether he still conducts there. My brother had auditioned the year before, and gotten in for that particular year.
Okay.
And he was in year 11. So like he was already going. And I was like, yeah, I'd be keen. And I rang up my parents, and my parents said, go for it. You know, you don't have to audition. You're getting in basically a free ride. It's not going to, not be super, it was quite expensive, but not going to be a huge amount more expensive because we're already paying for one of you guys to go, and the sibling fees are reduced a bit. You may as well take this opportunity while you've got it.
Yeah.
So I took it. Rehearsals were on a Friday night, and we had musical rehearsals on a Friday afternoon. So my brother and I were always running late to the rehearsals because they were all the way in the city, and it was quite a chore to get in. And the conductor always got mad at us for not getting into rehearsals on time, or there'd be dates where my brother wouldn't be at rehearsals and I would be. And I got like upset. Like I was like, there was just no kindness and no understanding in the fact that, the conductor who runs the performing arts programs is good friends with him. And there was no understanding in that we are trying our best here. I was in year 12, was finishing up high school.
Yeah, you're busy.
There was a lot of things. We had the National Band Championships, which that band competed in and won. And so there was this expectation to do really well in that. I was also competing in the National Band Championships in another one. He kind of bullied the community ensemble I was playing in that was going to the National Band Championships a little bit and pushed them around, which didn't make me feel very comfortable. And the poor conductor, who was my trombone teacher at the time, kind of had to deal with it. And I felt really bad about it. And I was constantly made to feel guilty about trying my best. And it really made me upset. And, I'd get to a Friday afternoon and admittedly, I was quite exhausted. And there were days where I just did not want to go in. It was just too much. My brother then joined the senior vocal group, which started rehearsals after the musical had finished. And so he would have rehearsals there, and I'd have to pick him up and then drive all the way into the city to rehearse and then come back late at night. And then I'd have to go back into the city on a Saturday morning for the conservatorium rehearsals. And there was this one rehearsal I particularly remember. We were at a high school. We were rehearsing there because there was a big show happening in our normal rehearsal space. And I had turned up to the previous rehearsal, but my brother hadn't. And he turned up, and he was the only tuba who had turned up that particular day. And we were playing Percy Grainger's Over the Hills and Far Away, which is this amazing piece.
Australian composer.
I really love Percy Grainger. He's awesome. And William and I had played it at a music camp 3 months prior to a professional standard. So like over a week, we had played it to a professional standard and performed it to about 1,000 people. Then, so the conductor turns around to my brother and goes, "You better play this 100% correct," and runs the piece. And my brother and I, because we knew this piece like the back of our hands, played the whole thing without a single mistake, driving the whole band, making sure the whole thing was, pretty much perfect. And we were like, we do that. We do things out of spite.
I love it, honestly.
But like it really opened my eyes. I was just so upset at the fact that he continued to always wanting to pick an argument at us, always wanting to blame someone, and the first person he would turn to was myself and my brother. I don't know whether it was because my brother has red hair. I don't know whether it was because we just, he didn't know us as well or whatever. It kind of made me quite upset. And I had, he was the one who made me not want to continue music into a university setting, because I'm like, if these are the egos I'm going to have to deal with, this is not the profession I want to go in. I will be miserable. I will never want to play, and I will probably break my love of music if I try to continue this further. And I had a really great chat to some of the people in the community band I played with, and they said, we all had the opportunity to play professionally and go and study, but we chose not to so that we could enjoy playing music and it not to be a chore. And so I suppose the lesson of this story was I really learnt that music is something that we should enjoy and not feel like a chore.
Yeah, there's definitely the danger of that, especially when, I don't know, there's a lot of competition, I think, between students. You know, oh, I practice for X amount of time per day. I never sleep, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know. I've never really had that attitude because I love it, but I'm never going to sacrifice like my own mental health just to get like ready for a performance.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be as good as it's going to be. And that's just my attitude. You know, a lot of singers especially don't have that attitude, and that's totally okay. Like, do whatever works for you. But yeah, I think there's some stereotypes that there's really, really big egos, and there's a lot of like backstabbing and like catty kind of like, oh, I like stole a spot kind of thing in classical music. And while there are stories of that for sure, you know, the friends that I've made and the people that I've met online or like in person who like in this industry are all amazing and wonderful and so supportive. So usually actually like when a person is like that, like other people will talk shit and be like, don't work with this person. They won't get opportunities, or, you know, they won't get like new students because like word travels pretty fast. So all in all, I think despite some of the stereotypes and despite some of like the big names that are maybe not great, like all in all, it's like such a wonderful community.
Oh, yeah. It by no means is representative of the amazing community. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that I've stopped playing. It just meant that I decided that I wasn't going to pursue it formally because I didn't need to have that kind of... And, you know, I've had similar experiences now in the workplace that I'm leaving. I recently quit my job as a tutor, and I'm starting up as an administration assistant. And... you know, the community was really great and the work was really awesome, but the management and the lady who ran the place wasn't. And it really, you know, that extra load is not something I need on my life. Especially, I know you made the comment earlier that I sound like a really busy person, and I am quite a busy person. You know, I'll get up from this and I've got to run to, you know, a radio show, and then I've got to figure out how I'm working this afternoon. And it's just... You know, when I've got so much going on, and something gets to the point where it's making an undue load on me, I feel like, and it's taken me so long to understand this, I feel like I can now just say no and go, I'm not dealing with this anymore.
That's so important. Not just like in the arts world or anything, but just like in, I guess, like adulting in general, is learn when to say no and learn when to say yes. So say yes when you need that little extra push. It's something you've maybe never tried before. It's out of your box a little bit. You never know like what opportunities it could bring. But like learning how to say no is something that's so important, and that I'm only just kind of like getting around to figuring out. But it's a good skill, that's for sure.
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, thank you so much for coming on Content and Capable, Adele. I really enjoyed chatting music with you more. I feel like we need to have another chat sometime.
Oh, yes. Well, anytime you want to have me back, I'm happy to come on. I had such a blast. Thank you so much for inviting me and listening to me ramble about everything from specific niche music research that I do to just like the future of the industry.
Yeah. So vague and up in the air at the moment. Yeah. Love it. Where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter. My Instagram is adele.marilyn, and then my Twitter is the same thing, but an underscore instead of a dot. Twitter is mostly, I would say, like the life of a grad student and kind of classical music memes, jokes, observations about the industry, which is a lot of fun. So you can catch me there to see what's up.
Yeah. And do you want to plug anything that you've been reading, listening, interacting with?
Yeah, so I actually finished this really, really great book the other day. It's a novella for anyone who's really interested in sci-fi and kind of like unconventional storytelling. It's called This Is How You Lose the Time War. I forget who the author is. It's on my shelf somewhere. But I can I'll send you the info. Yeah, and it was it was probably one of the best stories that I've read in 2021. Not books, because it's technically a novella, but just like, yeah, wow. It left me absolutely floored. It was really, really cool. Great descriptive writing. Really cool premise. Yeah, just really different. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm hurriedly searching. I've remembered a book that I want to plug, and I cannot remember the name, and it is terrifying. So I'm grabbing out extensive piles of books looking for it. Did I not move it out of the house? Wow, I am a terrible human being. My poor mother has so many books, and then I just leave my books there after I move out. How rude.
Yeah, my parents' place has pretty much like all of my books.
There we go. I found the Year 11 English assignment I wrote on it. Well, you can find me at on Twitter at SamOBJournalist and on Instagram and TikTok at sam.the.journalist. I am going to plug a book by the name of A Certain Music by Celeste Walters. And it's this book inspired by the story of Beethoven. Wow, words. And it's this little girl who has these interactions with Beethoven as he becomes more and more deaf. And it's very interesting and a very beautiful book.
I love that. I feel like I should have plugged a music book. Oh, no. Boo. I can also add, we mentioned Mozart, and I know that the Movie Night Crew Network covered the movie Amadeus. So if you're interested in like not really super factual classical music movies, it's definitely worth watching. It's an absolute ride. And then listen to the Movie Night Crew Network's coverage of it, which I loved listening to. It was a blast.
Yes, for sure. Like, even if it's like a slightly funny movie, the Movie Night Crew Network has some hot takes. Oh, yeah. And I'm sure it'll be very interesting to listen to. Not that I'm up to date with podcasts. I feel very guilty about that. But that is our summer project, listening to those podcasts.
Yeah, once you're done your busy term.
Yes. One more assignment to go. Let's do this.
You got this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And we will definitely have to chat again. I feel like there is so much more about classical music that needs to be discussed.
That sounds awesome. Thank you again so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Content and Capable. You can follow the podcast socials at Content, the letter N, Capable on Instagram and Twitter. You can send a super boring email to us through contentandcapablepod@gmail.com. The art was done by Opia. You can follow them on Opia_art on Instagram. Opia is spelled OPIA. Feel free to message them about making art for your project. Our music was written, recorded, and edited by Nora Strauss-Riggs. You can find Nora at Kane_I, that's I as in the body part, on Instagram and Twitter. Feel free to message her about making music for your project or editing your podcast. I'm proud to be a part of the Movie Night Crew Network, which features the Restricted section, a chapter-by-chapter Harry Potter pod with lots of spoilers all the time, Of the Eldest Gods, a chapter-by-chapter Rick Riordan pod full of myths and legends, My Cabbages, an Avatar podcast that follows the true hero of Avatar The Last Airbender, the Cabbage Cart Guy, Fandom's Gone Wrong, a show that discusses all things fandoms, and the Movie Night Crew. Join some friends as they react to some terrible, some meh, and some really great movies.
Alrighty.
It's movie night.
Grab your popcorn,
grab your coffee,
grab your friend,
grab a cat.
And let's go!
Who directed this?
What year did it come out?
Is that girl from that show?
Who wrote this?
Where's the cat?
Who would you rather bang?
Pass the popcorn.
Does this pass the Bechdel test?
What about the Steve Buscemi test?
Does a woman literally speak in this movie?
Oh my god, a dog.
This reminds me of in Harry Potter when...
Are we recording?
What did the critics say?
It's a guilty pleasure.
What's your rating?
Can you be quiet?
Oh my god.
Movie Night Crew.
It's just like watching movies with your friends.
And then arguing about it after.
Every Sunday wherever you get podcasts.
Content and Capable is a podcast all about answering the question, how do you adult?
Don't forget to rate and review it on your favourite podcatcher, and I will see you next Monday for another episode.
That movie sucked.
I kind of liked it.
Movie Night Crew Network.